Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: huge protests in Yemen while tensions rise in the Red Sea as Houthi attacks on cargo ships continue. Our other headlines: after this conflict, Israel and its ally, the United States, appear to be at odds over what happens next in Gaza. Israeli tanks inch closer to the biggest hospital still working in Gaza as the city of Khan Yunis sees the heaviest battles of the year so far. And its destination Brazil, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi arrives for his two-day state visit. Thousands of people have gathered in Yemen's capital to protest against airstrikes launched by the United States on Houthi rebel positions. The streets of Sana'a have filled with demonstrators waving Palestinian flags and chanting their support for the Houthis. This comes as the leaders of the Iranian-backed group say they don't intend to expand their attacks on shipping beyond the Red Sea. The Houthis say their actions are in solidarity with Palestinians under attack from Israel in Gaza. Meanwhile, attacks in the Red Sea region continue. The United States says Houthi rebels launched missiles at an American tanker ship on Friday, but no damage was caused. This comes after the United States and the UK launched a series of strikes last week against the group's targets in Yemen. President Joe Biden has admitted it might not be stopping Houthi attacks, but vowed that there would be no let-up.
Well, when you say working, are they stopping the Houthis? No. Are they going to continue? Yes.
Israel and its closest ally, the United States, appear to be at odds over the future once this Gaza conflict is over. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, says any Palestinian statehood that does not guarantee Israel's security is off the table. But Washington says there is no way to resolve Israel's long-term security challenges without the establishment of a Palestinian state.
In any future arrangement, with or without an accord, the State of Israel must have security control over the entire territory west of the Jordan River. That's a necessary condition. It clashes with the principle of sovereignty, but what can you do? I tell this truth to our American friends, and I also stop the attempt to impose a reality on us that would harm Israel's security. For 30 years, I've been very consistent, and I say a simple thing. This conflict is not about the absence of a Palestinian state, but the existence of a state, a Jewish state.
Well, let's talk to our correspondent, Sarah Coates, watching events for us in Tel Aviv. Sarah, Israel and the United States seemingly on different tracks here.
You're right, Jamie. It certainly appears as though a rift is developing here. Very differing opinions there, which are creating many challenges for the US President Joe Biden. The US is appearing to give a lot to Israel with really not much in return. We do need to remember that Washington really has its hands full here. You just reported on those Red Sea attacks there by the Houthis. That, of course, is happening on a near daily basis. There is, of course, also this situation on the northern border with Lebanon. Hezbollah and Israel continue to trade these tit-for-tat strikes across that border. Washington has been calling on Hezbollah to pull back from the border, to pull its fighters back, to create some sort of a buffer zone. And there, of course, there is the West Bank. Washington also continues to call on Israel to put a lid on that area to really try and rein things in. But what we've been seeing, of course, since October 7 are daily raids on the West Bank, especially on refugee camps there that the IDF considers to be terrorist hotspots. And just the latest one, Tulkarm refugee camp, it was at the centre of a 45-hour raid. That has just wrapped up. We can report that 8 Palestinians were killed since Wednesday and dozens of others arrested. So this is of real concern there for the United States.
Meanwhile, protests and calls for a ceasefire in Tel Aviv.
Right. It's really a sign of growing frustration. Thousands of people taking to the streets of Tel Aviv last night, marching through the streets, chanting, holding signs that read things like, "Cease fire now," and "There will be no security until there's peace." They're also calling on the government to change its approach, to change its political strategy when it comes to the situation inside the Gaza Strip. Here's what one of the protesters had to say.
We need to stop the war and start talking about peace, about hope, vision, and living side by side with Palestinians, including Gaza.
And this comes as a number of hostage families, Jamie, are pledging to take what they call extreme action. They say the government needs to do more to bring these people home. They say they are done with playing nice. They say they will turn the country upside down if they have to, calling on the Israeli government to convene an international body, an international conference to bring people in, to bring these people home. We do need to remember there are still more than 100 hostages being held in the Gaza Strip, and they've been there for more than 100 days, Jamie.
Sarah, thank you for that. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Well, Gaza's health ministry says at least 142 Palestinians have now been killed in the last 24 hours as Israeli tanks push further into the city of Khan Yunis. Fighting is inching closer to the enclave's largest functioning hospital. Nasser Hospital not only treats the injured, but also houses people displaced by this conflict. Doctors say working there is unbearable. This, as Gaza's health authorities say, the total death toll since the 7th of October now stands at more than 24,700 people. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Noor Harazin in Rafah. Noor, what's the latest on these Israeli strikes today?
Well, yes, a day of intensive Israeli strikes on the coastal enclave from its north to its south. Talking about some of the highlights and starting from northern Gaza, the Israeli tanks shelled Palestinian homes and Palestinian farms in eastern Jabalia refugee camp. In one Israeli strike on a residential home next to the Ashifa hospital, 15 people were killed. Talking about middle Gaza, the Israeli tanks continued their incursion in the Al Bureij refugee camp. Snipers shot towards Palestinians in the Al Nusayrat refugee camp, and at the same time Israeli warplanes launched several Israeli airstrikes on the Al Nusayrat refugee camp in Khan Yunis, where actually most of the battles on the ground are happening now. Khan Yunis is the second biggest city in the coastal enclave after northern Gaza, and it turned like a battlefield. Continuous fighting between the Palestinian militants and the Israeli troops on the ground. The Israeli military actually now centered the heart of Khan Yunis city, and according to doctors, eyewitnesses and journalists inside the Al-Nasser hospital, the Israeli tanks have been shelling on buildings and homes surrounding the Al-Nasser hospital. We also actually visited the camps of displaced Palestinians here in Rafah. We are talking about more than 1.2 displaced Palestinians that came here to Rafah seeking safety, seeking shelter. We visited some of these camps to take a look at the very bad conditions of the people, how they are struggling living in these tents, and let us show you some of the stories that we witnessed.
Since October, nearly 2 million people, more than 85% of the population, have been displaced across the Gaza Strip. Families are forced to move frequently, searching for some safe place as the Israeli ground operation grows larger. The city of Rafah, located in southern Gaza, has become a huge camp where hundreds of tents have been set up using wood and plastic sheets that do not protect against rain or the cold of winter. In a worn-out tent made of fabric, Muhammad sits with her children after she left her home in Jabalia in northern Gaza to a tent in Rafah. Muhammad says that her children have been sick due to the unclean environment, lack of clothes and blankets, and their exposure to extreme conditions at night.
We can no longer do anything. I feel helpless after everyone ignored our pleas. We have no drinking water, food, or even electricity. 2 children died here in these tents due to the extreme cold. We cannot find milk for our children, so we boil water with sugar to satisfy their hunger. Now we don't even have sugar.
The residents of the camps share the same struggle. Ahmed Abu Jamal suffers daily to provide water for his family of 7. Sometimes he is forced to walk long distances.
It's difficult for us to get water and food. As you know, the war has displaced us from our home in Gaza to Rafah in the south. We face difficulty in obtaining water. We try in every way to find water and fill it from anywhere. Sometimes I walk more than 2 kilometers just to fill 1 liter of water.
There is no longer room for families in school shelters, so the displaced people are building ramshackle tents on the sides of buildings, making sure to be as close as possible to UN flags or the Egyptian border, in the hope they are protected from Israeli airstrikes. Noor Harazin, CGTN, Gaza.
Pakistan is holding a national security meeting as pressure grows on Islamabad to ease the standoff with Iran. A meeting of government ministers and the military comes after the 2 countries traded attacks on what both described as terrorist hideouts in each other's territory. The tit-for-tat strikes have raised fears of wider instability in the Middle East, but both Tehran and Islamabad have since signaled a desire to calm tensions. Meanwhile, Iran says it has successfully carried out an air defense drill using drones designed to intercept hostile targets. State media said the exercises, staged across a large area, involve various branches of the military, including the Navy of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, how do you rebuild trust in governments and corporates? That's under discussion at the final day of the World Economic Forum in Davos.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans, grey rhinos, and unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliette Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
The 27th of January marks the 60th anniversary of China and France beginning their diplomatic relationship and starting a historic new chapter. We'll be covering the partnership in detail with week-long special coverage and meeting the bridge builders who have dedicated their lives to strengthening ties between the 2 countries. China-France 60 years, beginning Saturday, the 27th of January, on CGTN.
This week on Razor, conversations about the joy of science with Professor Carlo Rovelli.
Can I borrow your watch?
Yes.
The point about watches is that they all go together. Now, if this much better watch, the thing would happen, if I move one up, okay, wait a little bit, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I come down, they would not indicate the same time anymore.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Israel and its closest ally, the United States, appear to be at odds over what happens next when this conflict ends in Gaza. Our other headlines: Israeli tanks inch closer to the biggest hospital still working in Gaza as the city of Khan Yunis sees the heaviest battles of the year so far. And huge protests in Yemen while tensions rise in the Red Sea as Houthi attacks on cargo ships continue. Well, the impact of those Red Sea attacks is being felt right across supply chains of goods and fuel around the world. CGTN's correspondent Peter Oliver looks now at the impact on Europe.
Europe's prestige manufacturing still has plenty to show. It just lacks the parts to make the products go. Volvo has announced that they would rein back some production in Ghent in Belgium. That's due to a shortage of gearbox parts that are taking longer to get to Europe as they have to travel around the Cape of Good Hope as opposed to going through the Suez Canal. Michelin is the latest major European manufacturer to announce that they will be suspending production. Their factories in Spain will shut down for 2 days over the weekend.
And here at Tesla's Gigafactory just outside of Berlin, almost all production will halt between January 29th and February the 11th.
It's all because of delays in supply chains caused by Houthi attacks on ships in the Red Sea. A resolution seems far away, with the United States stepping up its response.
Today, the Secretary of State announced the designation of the Houthis as a specially designated global terrorist, effective February 16th for threatening the security of the United States.
Thousands of kilometers from the Red Sea in Germany, the plight of the blue-chip brands might grab the headlines, but 23% of German GDP is generated by small and medium-sized manufacturers. And this latest crisis could push them to the brink.
It has the potential that some of the smaller, medium-sized enterprises don't have the stamina to survive it. Because in the short run, it's like we don't have enough material or don't get what we urgently need to keep our contracts being fulfilled.
With insurance companies saying they will no longer underwrite US, British or Israeli vessels to traverse the Red Sea, more ships will have to avoid the waterway entirely, meaning more costs, more delays and more headaches for manufacturing in Europe. Peter Oliver, CGTN, Berlin.
China's foreign minister is visiting Brazil as Beijing looks for closer ties with the country. Wang Yi has met his counterpart, Mauro Vieira, with the two countries expected to sign trade and cooperation agreements. He's also holding talks with Brazil's president, Lula da Silva. Wang's visit comes as China and Brazil mark the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations. Conflicts, climate, artificial intelligence and rebuilding trust. It's the final day of the World Economic Forum in Davos, and our correspondent Evangelo Sipsas is there watching events for us. Evangelo, who have you been hearing from today?
Well, today was not as busy as the previous days, as is the last day, and most of the panels have ended now. But it was an important, and there was a lot of topics that had a lot of interest in it. So, for example, the U.S.-China relations, descripting that relation to geopolitical tensions and how they can solve them, how more than 4 billion people are going to be affected by the upcoming somewhat 70 elections in 2024, but also the global economic outlook. And in that that panel. There were interesting people, including Christine Lagarde from the Central Bank of Europe, the finance minister of Germany, Christian Lindner, but also the general director of the World Trade Organization, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who mentioned a lot of things. She specifically talked also about artificial intelligence, trade and the services, but also green transition. Green transition, that now is a time for sensible ideas. Ideas in the green trade that have increased, tripled actually since 2000, up to $1.9 billion. And that back then when that was proposed, it was a challenge. But now it had turned into an opportunity. And she said that the challenges that we're facing today, we should see them as opportunities as well. Let's have a listen.
Trade has been a force for resilience. There's digital trade and services trade is growing fast, especially digitally delivered services trade, growing at 8% per annum. And that is a very, very interesting thing, because now we're all talking of digital platforms, AI, and this is a positive sign. Green trade has tripled from 2000 to now, tripled in value to $1.9 trillion. That's another opportunity. And finally, I want to say that the reshaping of supply chains, I see that as an opportunity and not a challenge.
And the head of the Central European Bank also mentioned a few things, Christine Lagarde. She spoke a little bit about the elections that are going to be happening in the United States, and that if Trump does get elected, then Europe should pretty much defend itself by attacking, not literally attacking the United States, but actually taking its economy in its own matters. They don't want to have a war in subsidies, as she mentioned also, that was said by the German finance minister, but rather we need to take care of our own projects. We need to take care of our own economies, just like we did as we had to do it during the energy crisis. Now, there was a lot said today. It is the last day. Most of the people have left. A lot on that topic, but more is still coming out as we will be listening to more of what the last panel actually had to say on the economic outlook.
Evangelo, thank you for that. Our correspondent Evangelo Sipsas in Davos. The United States Congress has approved the stopgap bill to fund the federal government until March, averting a partial government shutdown. It passed through both House of Representatives and the Senate despite the political tensions. Funding for agriculture, energy and water services had been due to run out on Friday. The DPRK says it carried out a test of an underwater drone, which it claims could be used to carry nuclear weapons. The Defense Ministry said the test took place off the country's east coast and was in response to this week's joint naval drills between the United States, South Korea and Japan. Seoul described the reported tests as a provocation. NATO will next week carry out its biggest military exercises since the Cold War, with 90,000 personnel due to take part. It's aimed at showing the alliance's capability of defending all of its territory and comes as Russia's war on Ukraine grinds on. One NATO commando has warned members need to be ready for an all-out war with Russia within 20 years. The Prime Ministers of Sweden and Finland have been meeting with EU President Ursula von der Leyen in Stockholm to discuss regional security. Finland's Prime Minister Petteri Orpo told reporters that the country does not see any immediate military threat from Russia. Now, she sings in 7 languages, including Chinese, and the Spanish opera star Estibaliz Martin is promoting cultural ties between Spain, Europe and China. Our correspondent Ken Brown reports now from Madrid.
Opera singer, model, actor and pianist, Estibaliz Martin is a Spanish soprano whose star is on the rise. She sings in 7 languages and now in Chinese too. Martin has performed with Placido Domingo and in concerts, films and musicals from New York to Nanjing.
I'm a lover of different arts, but music really reaches us, you know. It has a really clear emotional impact. Music has the unique ability to connect with our emotions. One of the first unforgettable contacts I had with China and its music was just a year ago, on the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and Spain, where I sang as soprano soloist at the National Music Auditorium in Madrid with the Chinese Traditional Orchestra.
Since then, Martine has toured and played in Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Shanghai, Hong Kong, Macau, Beijing and beyond. She rated first on a China-based international singing contest held in 33 countries and is currently preparing expanded tour dates across China in 2024. Meeting Spain-based businesswoman Margaret Chen was a defining moment for Estíbaliz and her Chinese journey.
I was totally shocked and impacted by her voice, by her beauty. So after knowing that she has been already singing in 7 languages, and I said, why not Chinese? Chinese people love her voice. She's just, her voice is so beautiful. And also, generally she's such a beautiful girl. And I think she's just, people adore her.
Here at Madrid's storied Teatro Real, or Royal Theatre, Estíbaliz Martín is already a well-known face. And now China is discovering her talents too. A cross-cultural success made possible through the universal language of music. With an exciting year ahead, the sky's the limit for Spain's superstar soprano who's charming China and bringing people together. Ken Brown, CGTN, Madrid.
And finally, Japan is on final approaches to become the 5th country to land on the moon. Its Smart Lander, or SLIM for short, is expected to begin its descent to the moon in about half an hour. If all goes well, the craft will land 20 minutes later. Dubbed the Moon Sniper because of its planned accuracy, the lander is attempting to land within 100 meters of its largest crater and then study the rocks around the edge. The headlines again. Huge protests in Yemen while tensions rise in the Red Sea as Houthi attacks on cargo ships continue. Our other headlines: Israel and its ally, the United States, appear to be at odds over what happens next after the Gaza conflict. And Israeli tanks inch closer to the biggest hospital still working in the besieged enclave as the city of Khan Yunis sees the heaviest battles of the year so far. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
Hello and welcome to the weather forecast. I'm Tierney. Well, over to Europe. Heavy snow will persist for another couple of days for a pretty narrow swath across Russia for both Saturday and Sunday, particularly for the higher elevations as well as the mountainous areas. So please take necessary precaution to stay safe. Meanwhile, we can notice that clear skies are likely to eventually return to the majority of the north of Europe from Sunday onward, possibly, which is a great improvement in weather. Temperature-wise, a lot of warmer temperatures are likely to develop here from the west all the way towards into the east over the next couple of days, and daily rise could be as much as 5 degrees Celsius. And several locations will see the high temperatures from below average back to normal or even above normal levels as we head into early next week. So please be prepared and take care. And about business and travel, and overcast conditions for Paris with a high of 11 and low temperatures about 2 degrees Celsius. And down in Madrid, we'll see clear skies in the morning hours with a high of 14, and the overnight low temperatures will be in the negative readings. So please pay special attention to the big temperatures difference between the highs and lows. And for other major cities across the central portion of Europe, chance of mix of rain and snow here for Berlin with a high of 5 and low temperatures about -5 degrees Celsius on Sunday. And Warsaw will also see chance of mix of rain and snow with a high of 2 and low about -1 degree Celsius. And that is all from me. Stay tuned for more City Forecast.